Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm really glad that I'm going after Neelam because he already sort of set the basis for the screenomics approach. And when Neelam and I were coordinating our talks for today, I was saying, well, Neelam is going to talk all about the cool stuff of screenomics, and I'm going to talk about the nitty-gritty practical stuff about screenomics in terms of its actual use in research, and especially with regard to IRB, constant assent, and data storage. So specifically, I'm going to talk about the Ellison and the family screenome study that I started when I was a postdoc at Stanford University. So I joined the Human Screenome Project, as mentioned by Neelam, in 2019, and this was by the time I joined the lab has already developed the screenomics approach. So for those of you who haven't been here, maybe during Neelam's talk on the screenomics app, I'm just going to briefly recap what this app does. So basically, the participant, once this app is installed on their smartphone, it will run passively and unobtrusively on the background of participant's smartphone. And what it does is that it captures screenshots for every 5 seconds whenever the screen is activated, and then along with the metadata in terms of timestamps and some digital events and app logging. So I know Neelam has shown some video from our undergraduate research assistant, Maya. Here's another demo of the screenome data from our research assistant, Sarah, who granted us permission to share her data publicly. But as what Neelam mentioned, for our actual participants' data, we're never going to share it like this in public because of the high confidentiality that we're holding towards for the data. So as you could see, basically Screenome is capturing everything that's going on the screenshot, from bus schedule to texting to music, social media, some kind of cosmetic stuff, some searching, fashion, steps, music, more music, some food and drink, shopping, texting, more texting on another app, and more texting, and then social media and steps. And so just to note, this was only screenshots that were captured continuously for 4 hours, I think, on Sarah's smartphone. And so it's already so much, but imagine in our actual study, we actually collect participants' data across several months, even up towards a year. So we're getting a lot of data here. And so specifically, when I joined the lab, there was still not, the screenomic samples were still mainly adults. And so I sort of was lucky to get a postdoctoral grant from the Stanford Maternal and Child Health Research Institute, being mentored by Dr. Tom Robinson, Neelam Ram, Byron Reeves, and Manpreet Singh. And so funded by this grant, we started this Ellison and family screenome study, where we collected a nationwide sample of 163 adolescents and 107 of their parents. So here's the demographic distribution of this sample. We could see that it's a really ethnically, racially diverse sample. And for this study, we asked the participant to be in the study for 6 months, which include continuous screenome data collection with, again, screenshots captured every 5 seconds whenever the screen was activated, and associated metadata. So then with this metadata, we already would be able to tell at any time point in their participation whether or not they were using their smartphone, for how long, and which app they're using. Along with the screenome data collection, we also had the biweekly online surveys that we distributed through RedCap to participants, where they answer some measures on mental health, family relationships, COVID-19 related measures back then, and food and drinks. And in total, we collected about 15 million screenshots from this sample, and among which 38 million from from adolescents. And again, just want to highlight that we were only able to recruit Android users into this study. And so I feel similar to Amy in terms of talking about why screenomics to study adolescents and parents, because I feel I'm preaching to the choir, but still gonna kind of briefly go through why we think this method is so important. So first of all, we know that there are inaccuracies and biases in self-reports of digital device use, including based on our own sample of the adolescent and family screenome study, we found that among both adolescents and parents, when we compare their screenome data, that reflects objectively their smartphone use to their self-reports of smartphone use, we found some big difference, like, for example, a mean of over 2 hours absolute difference for adolescents and over 3 hours for parents. And most of them underestimated their screen time, especially parents. And we found that the inaccuracies existed not only in the overall smartphone use, but also in specific app categories. So in terms of if someone is being asked how long do you usually spend on a typical day spend on social media apps, their answers are usually not that reflective of their accurate or objective use of social media. And then we know that digital behaviors unfold and can vary on a moment-to-moment level, as is shown in some of the plots that Neelam presented. And then finally, there has been basically like a little evidence on the potential effects of general digital use and mental health. People in our field probably are all pretty familiar with Amy's paper on the association between adolescent well-being and digital technology use that revealed a very minimal association in the general technology use measure and the adolescent well-being. Similarly, our group also had the study where we tested longitudinally in terms of whether or not child owned a smartphone and when, like at what age did they own the smartphone in association with their adjustment outcomes, and basically mostly just no meaningful findings here. Sorry. So basically, that means we need more accurate, granular, and comprehensive observations, especially in terms of the specific content that has important developmental implications. So based on this study, our group has actually investigated a couple of different topics into adolescents' smartphone and social media use. So, for example, we have looked into their use, their smartphone use and social media use in association to their sleep outcomes. We have looked into how adolescents actually use their smartphones during school hours, especially in reflection of the recent discussion about smartphone ban at school. And then we also have looked into family communication instances between youth and then parents. And of course, we're also looking into the bidirectional association between social media use and mental health. But here today, I'm not going to talk about any of those substantive studies because I know my mission today is to talk about more of the ethics or the practical part. So first of all, I just want to talk about the IRB process. It was hard, especially back in, I think, 2020. It took us 11 months and 8 rounds of modification, starting from the initial submission of the IRB application to the approval. So I just want to warn you, if you're the first person in your institution who's going to do screenomics research, you might face a similar situation where you are basically kind of trailblazing this entire process. But I also want to say it's extremely rewarding, and I learned so much through this process. So there are, of course, a lot of comments and concerns from the IRB for us to address, but some of the main parts are, first of all, the necessity of collecting such data, and then also the consent assent procedure, the potential explicit images from children's smartphones, which I know also was being asked at the beginning of this workshop, and safety protocol if the content is concerning. So in terms of the necessity of collecting such data, I've already kind of talked about the scientific rationale for why we use screenomics to study adolescents and parents. So basically, again, the key points is to talk about how capturing content is important, how passive sensing can minimize the disruption to adolescents' regular use, etc. And then in terms of the consent and assent procedure for our study, because we basically were recruiting participants during COVID, and we wanted to have a nationwide sample. So we did all of the participant recruitment via online platforms. But the problem for participant recruitment online is then you need to verify their identity and really make sure that they understand the study protocol before they sign up. So to achieve that goal, basically we asked each interested adolescent participant who took the intake survey to determine their eligibility to schedule a meeting with one of our research staff via Zoom usually, and they have to be present with their parent or legal guardian. So we have encountered some rare cases where adolescents appear themselves into a meeting with us, and we just basically have to tell them from the beginning, like, sorry, we cannot enroll you in the study unless you appear with one of your legal guardians. And also at the beginning of the onboarding meeting, we would verify the parent's identity, usually by asking them to show a legal identification document, such as their driver's license. We verify their age, date of birth. And then our research staff would go in very details in terms of the information of the study, what the study protocol entails, especially what kind of information we're collecting through screenomics to make sure that both the adolescent and the parent are aware what we're doing. And also they were being told that they are free to make the choice to participate or not to participate in the study at any point. And it's totally okay for them to withdraw from the study at any point as well, even after they sign up for it. And of course, we also double check their eligibility again, make sure that we can recruit them into the study. So in this meeting, adolescents signed assent, and then parents signed consent and HIPAA authorization for the adolescents' participation. Another really tricky question, and I know we get this question a lot when we're giving talks, is about the potential explicit images, especially from children. So first of all, in our communication with the legal office in terms of this concern, first of all, we say that, and it's the fact is that the occurrence of such screenshots has been and will continue to be extremely rare. So as someone who have led a lot of labeling efforts of the collected screenshots so far, we have not identified any of child explicit images so far. But I have to, this has to be contingent on the fact that we collected so much data, and we promised the IRB and our participants that only less than 1% of collected screenshots will be viewed by human coders. Most of the screenshots will only just be processed by computers. And we also again, double check and reassure that we are only collecting screenshots of material that is actively viewed on the screen by the participants. We are not transferring to our research service any images that are stored on the participant's device or copies of images that might be downloaded from a source of explicit material shared by participants with others. For example, maybe they would send a video file attached to an email or text message. We had no way to download these files to our server. And we are also prepared to respond if we really observe an image suspected of being child abuse. I'm going to talk more about the mandatory reporting and safety protocol in the next few slides. And also, very importantly, we had some really serious legal discussions with the legal office, and I think eventually we responded to the legal office saying that we understand that criminal possession of child explicit images especially requires knowledge that the content exists and intent. So basically, our study was not intending to collect any of the child explicit images, and we also, again, have not really identified any such image so far. And also, very importantly, the law says it does not apply to legitimate medical, scientific, or educational activities. So in terms of safety protocol, first of all, during consent, we do inform both the parent and the participants that we are mandatory reporters if there are any, or we need to actually breach the confidentiality if we realize there's information relating to suicide, physical or sexual abuse. And then during data analysis or viewing of the screenshots for the study, first of all, each research team member is trained to be mandatory reporters whenever we see anything related to, again, like suicide or intentional harm of others and child abuse and neglect. And very importantly, we have Dr. Tom Robinson as a California licensed physician and American Board of Pediatrics member. And so basically all our team members who are trained to view any screenshots in our server are told to immediately basically contact Dr. Robinson if we see any of these risky content on the screenshot. In terms of data storage of such highly confidential data, we actually have different tiers of data storage depending on the type of the data we're collecting. So first of all, of course, we also have low-risk tier data, which is the de-identified survey data, and some metadata from the screenomics data collection. Those are shareable with researchers who have gone through our ethics training. And then also the second tier was the moderate risk tier, which includes some maybe unde-identified survey data and metadata. And for these data, they can only be stored on our PHI and PII safe box folder. They could also be downloaded into encrypted computers of trained researchers in the team to conduct data analysis and data cleaning. But once those data are being handled, they should always be deleted from the local computers. And then the third tier, which is really the high risk tier, is the screenshots and then some associated data. For example, what mentioned is the extracted text data from each screenshot. Those can only stay in the Google Cloud platform that we're using. So the GCP instance, we made it very clear to our entire team that none of this data could be downloaded, replicated, or transferred outside of the GCP instance. All the viewing, processing, and analysis can only be conducted on the GCP instance, such as using virtual machines on GCP. And especially in the case of large language modeling processing, we know that sometimes some large language models only allow you to use it through their API. If that's the case, we cannot use that kind of large language models. We can only use LLMs that can only run locally on our virtual machines in GCP. And then I already sort of talked a little bit about ethics in terms of especially people in our research team. So every team member, actually, especially those who are dealing with the screenshots, have undergone like a series of rigorous training for handling the screenshot data. So first of all, of course, everyone in the team needs to go through city training, but we also have the screenomics specific training. And then also everyone, after their training, they need to sign the confidentiality agreement. So the screenomics specific training can include several messages we're trying to deliver to our research team members. First of all, of course, as what I mentioned, the mandatory reporting requirements. And then also we spend a lot of effort and time double checking and double training on the data privacy and confidentiality. So these are some of the messages we've been training the research team members on, so such as everyone needs to use a secure, password-protected device, and then we can only use the data for educational research purpose only. We cannot release the data in any way. And we cannot try to identify the identity of any person. We have to really protect our login name and password. And then none of us is allowed to download, screenshot, save, or copy any images or data containing personal information on GCP. And then when people are handling the screenshot data, they have to be in a private space with a locked door. And then during breaks, they have to log out of GCP. And again, we have to make sure everyone understand that all screenshots and participants on GCP have to stay on GCP. And in cases where, for example, the coder realized that, well, this screenshot might contain some risk, I need to discuss with the PI, or this screenshot I'm labeling, I'm not sure which category I should put it into. In those cases, we allow the research team members to record which screenshot it is by only taking down the anonymized ID of that screenshot. And so we are able to record those anonymized IDs of the screenshots on our local machine. And then in our group meeting discussion, or in the reporting to the PI on the risky content, we would actually huddle a meeting quickly together, and then log onto GCP and find that particular screenshot based on this anonymized ID, and then discuss the content on the screenshot accordingly. So as Stephen has mentioned and Neelam has mentioned, right now we're still having some ongoing data collection. So the Atlas and the Family Screenome study was collected between 2021 and 2022. Now, obviously, we're in a new era. And so very luckily, we got funded by NIMH on the specific mechanism for the social media and mental health among adolescents. So right now, we're actually trying to do a new batch of data collection at the University of Minnesota rather than at Stanford. So we have already finished phase 1, where we recruited 103 adolescents across the US to validate our daily diary measures and study protocol. We're yet to start phase 2 soon. And for the whole study design, especially phase 2, we're having a measurement burst design where we're collecting screenomics data, daily diaries, surveys, and interviews together. So very importantly, and I'm also very excited to hear the next session on Youth Advisory Board. So for the current study, we also have a Youth Advisory Board with about 20 youth. And we've been holding at least every 3 months focus groups with our Youth Advisory Board members on study design, recruitment and retention measures, analysis and result interpretations, and of course also ethics throughout the study. And it's just so helpful. We've got a ton of help from our Youth Advisory Board members. They are very honest, and they could just directly tell us, well, this message would make me feel uncomfortable. Think about, how you want to revise that. Or they would tell us, well, this recruitment or this retention message sounds very scammy. Like, I will just delete it right away. I would not look at it. So by kind of iterating our study design and our recruitment strategies with our Youth Advisory members throughout this process, we've learned so much, and we've also been just trying to understand how we can really ask and answer certain research questions in the way that benefit youth directly. And finally, for this ongoing data collection, unfortunately, we cannot use the open source screenomics app from Stanford anymore. And a very straightforward reason is because at the University of Minnesota, in our institution, we don't support GCP, unfortunately, but we support AWS, the Amazon Web Service. So instead, we turn to the Princeton Smart, formerly known as the ScreenLake open source tool. And this app, this is actually very, very similar to Screenomics, but the main difference is just it's built on AWS. And I am one of the members of the Princeton Smart Governance Committee. We also host webinars, I think every quarter, maybe. And so if anyone is interested in using this application, you're welcome to join our webinars as well. Okay, thank you all very much for your attention, and I look forward to the questions.
Fantastic. Amazing presentation. Make sure we have time for a couple questions, so drop questions in the Q&A. I may ask one question kind of going off that last point, Xiaoran, but you have a wealth of experience doing this. I'm curious if there's any other things that kind of came up as you went from Stanford to Minnesota, being at a new institution. any sort of unique novel challenges of IRB or other aspects of institutional environment that came up as like new challenges or barriers? Because being in different institutions across my career myself, I find that sometimes you make it through one IRB or one institutional thing, and it's like you've learned a lot, but also there's so much differences. So any other insights kind of trying to do this type of work at two different institutions?
For sure. Thank you so much, Stephen. And I totally agree. There definitely are challenges kind of moving different institutions. I think I'm lucky enough because I stay very close collaboration with the Stanford folks, and including for our R01, the Stanford is actually has a subcontract on it. So we are very, again, still very closely collaborating with each other. But yes, I think in addition to sort of the software support, switching from GCP to AWS, it's also that actually is also related to also devoting resources to personnel to re-implement everything, recreate a data storage structure, re-implement this app on develop the software on devices. So that there's definitely a lot of resources that are needed. In terms of IRB, I believe different institutions probably have different kind of IRB culture. Some institutions IRB are more collaborative than others. We're very lucky that U of M has a very collaborative IRB. So of course we need to draft our protocol and all the consent and assent procedure based on our IRB requirement rather than the Stanford requirement. But I'd say we're lucky, and I think that might be the case for everyone else who's going to do research on screenomics, is that in our IRB application right now, then we actually can put, well, this screenomics has been successfully applied safely and ethically at other institutions such as Stanford University, right? So the pioneering work that the Stanford folks have been doing is actually setting the example for people in other institutions. Now then we can cite, well, other people have already done this work, so we're not really like trying to do something super risky just out of the blue by ourselves. So I think that's also like very important to kind of highlight if you're considering using this tool in your own institution.
Fantastic. I'm not seeing any other questions, and I also know we have a quick transition, so I want to thank you again. Bethany dropped Xiaoran's email in the chat for everyone, but I also want to remind people that all these presentations are being recorded and will be made available through the TYDE YouTube channel. So I know I've been writing notes quickly, and this whole day has been filled with so much information, and so I just want everyone to know again that these presentations are being recorded and we make those available. So thank you so much, Xiaoran. This was a really great presentation.
Thank you so much.